Old toys that were sold for a lot of money. Dudley Do Right Metal lunchbox, $1,574. A dated meal necessity that gained popularity in the 50s all through to the early 90s, kids were able to display their fandom for numerous television shows of the time like Dudley Do Right. Considered to be an economic way to transport your meal for just a few dollars, are now selling for a couple grand on auction sites. What was once seen as a nuisance, people are shelling out well over $2,000 just to get their hands on a piece of history. The Dudley Do Right lunchbox sold for $1,574 on the auction site Hakes.com in January of 2008. Hot Wheels 1968 White Enamel Custom Camaro, $2,100. These miniature cars became an instant hit when they were first released in 1968. The white custom Camaro was one of the first castings of the Hot Wheels line and is highly sought after by toy collectors. In 2012, Marcus Cockrift found himself needing a new truck and decided to sell off some items. His mother then dug up his old Hot Wheels collection. In 2013, Marcus felt like he was ready to sell, but did research first before putting his cars up on Craigslist. Realizing the value of an original 1968 white enamel Camaro, he then listed the toy car on eBay, where he heckled with offers before finally settling on an offer from Aaron Evans for $2,100. Sega Genesis, $5,000. It was the gaming console that knocked Nintendo out of its throne and was considered to be the must-have console for gamers across the board. The device came with the exclusive Sonic the Hedgehog game and was the most popular toy for several years with its 16-bit technology. At the time of its release, the console cost around $189. Today, you'll engage in bidding wars between vintage game collectors and museums, on average winning the auctions after paying a few grand. On shopgoodwill.com, two Sega Genesis packaged together went online on November 1st, 2013 with a starting bid of $5. By November 6th, the bidding war led to the price of $1,053. But on that same day, someone put down a $9,000 bid and the war continued. The auction ended on November 7th and the two consoles sold for over $10,000 to an anonymous online bidder, and 39 bids in total were given. Large Steve Bear with muzzle, $8,500. If you have a vintage bear made by Steve hanging out in the attic, you could very well have a tiny fortune on your hands. The Steve Company was founded in Germany in 1880 and still exists today, making quality stuffed animals and children's clothing. Steve created one of the original teddy bears starting in 1902, and these are the bears that have become so valuable. So ask your grandparents and check the attics and trunks. In March 2014, Bertoya auctioned off a large Steve Bear with muzzle online with a starting bid of $2,000. By the time the online auction ended, the bear sold for $8,500 to an anonymous buyer. 1940 toy Superman ring, $10,000 to $13,000. Before DC Comics was DC Comics, they were known as the National Periodical Publications. In 1940, they gave away about 1,600 toy Superman rings to members of the Supermen of America Club. Only 20 rings are believed to exist today. In March 2010, after 54 bids, the rings sold for $13,000 on eBay. Where the Wild Things Are, $18,000. When this book by Maurice Sendak first came out in 1963, it only sold for $3.50. If you are in possession of a first edition version of this book, you can get enough money to buy a house or get yourself out of debt. A first edition print signed by Sendak sold for $18,000 at an auction by Swan Auction Galleries in 2013. Star Wars Boba Fett, $27,000. In January 2015, at an auction hosted by Vectis Auction, the world's largest toy auction house, Craig Stevens sold off his Star Wars collection. Stephen is the former Star Wars fan club chairman in the UK, and rumors of his toy collection were legendary in the Star Wars fan community. His most prized toy was the Boba Fett action figure made by Palitoy and was the most anticipated item in the auction. Boba Fett sold for a whopping $27,000. 1969 Volkswagen Beach Bomb, $125,000. The Volkswagen Beach Bomb was a tiny pink van with a surfboard in the back. It wasn't popular at the time of release and was pulled from the shelves shortly after, and the parts were used for other toys, which means that there aren't many in the market in the first place. The reason was that the car didn't play well on metal tracks at the time. Vintage toy collectors have been since scouring the earth for this little piece of history. In October of 2011, at the 25th Annual Hot Wheels Collectors Convention, collectors Mark Meredith and Mike Stevenson sold their Beach Bomb for $125,000 to an anonymous buyer. 1963 G.I. Joe prototype, $200,000. In August of 2003, Don Levine, who created the G.I. Joe prototype, sold his prized toy at auction for $200,000 to a businessman named Stephen A. Jeppy during an auction hosted by Heritage Comic Auctions in Dallas, Texas. The purchase made the Guinness World Book of Records as the most expensive toy soldier sold at auction. 1916 French doll, $300,000. In March of 2015, Thorold Auctions hosted an auction where a doll created in 1916 by Albert Marquis broke world records and sold for $300,000. The doll was still in her original dress and was the centerpiece in an auction that had over 100 items. Thorold specializes in auctioning off children's toys, and Albert Marquis was one of the most prominent sculptors and doll makers in the 19th and 20th centuries, thus making the doll one of the most valuable items ever sold at an auction.